Hey, what's going on, everybody? Timothy here, back with another seasonal work video. In today's video, I wanted to talk about housing. This is another one of the kind of hot questions people have when they find out about seasonal work. So I wanted to make this video and kind of answer some of the questions about housing, as well as kind of tell you what to expect. So there's kind of three different levels of housing when it comes to seasonal work. You have some companies that offer no form of housing, and you basically have to show up and find your own place to live. Most companies aren't like this, but there are some that are still like this. So be sure when you're applying for a job to check the listing, as well as ask anyone you might talk to, your phone interview or whatever. Just going to ask them about housing. Me personally, not going to work for a company that offers me no type of housing at all. Next, you have companies that don't offer any type of company kind of sponsored housing, but they will work with you to find you a place to rent, a place to stay in the local community. A lot of times they, know the right people to talk to. They have listings of the people who will rent to their employees. So when you get there, they make it pretty easy to find some place to stay because they deal with the same people year in and year out. So it's not company-sponsored employee housing, but they will help you find a place to stay. And third and finally, you have, which most of the companies that hire seasonal workers do, is to have their own employee housing. It just makes it easier. It makes it easier to get people to come work for you when you can tell them, don't worry about it. We've got housing. You'll have a place to stay guaranteed. So most of the companies will have their own kind of employee housing. And typically what they do is they charge you for this housing. It's somewhere usually between like $7 and $10 a day. I don't know why most of them charge by the day instead of just charging by like the week, but they typically charge $7 to $10 by the day, and they take it out of your paycheck. So it's not like you ever kind of have to go in and pay rent for your housing. It comes out of your paycheck. You don't even realize they're taking it out. You just get used to getting a paycheck for right around the same amount. I personally really like that feature because it kind of takes away the stress of another bill to pay. They take the housing out automatically. I don't have to worry about it. Sometimes if they offer meals and things like that, it will be included with the price in your housing. Sometimes not, but you're going to be looking at around $7, $10 a day typically. There will be some companies that ask for a deposit down before they'll let you in your room when you first get there, something you want to check into, ask about in your phone interview, things like that. Just make sure there's not a deposit, and if there is, how much it is, and will they take check, cash, things like that. One place I worked for, a lot of people kind of got jammed up because they didn't realize there was a deposit. The company would take it out in increments out of your check, but your first couple checks, you kind of want all your money. It kind of was a hassle. So check on that. Make sure you know what's up with the deposit. Okay, so what to expect in employee housing? First off, I'm just going to say, don't expect like glamorous, just like totally nice rooms. The employee housing will vary kind of depending on the company you work for. I've been in employee housing and had rooms that were nice. I've been in employee housing, had rooms that were crappy. I've had rooms in between. I've talked to people who had rooms that were really nice at some of the places they worked. I've talked to people who had rooms that were just horrible at places they worked. All employee housing is not created equal. It just kind of depends on the company you're working for. I recommend going online and kind of Googling to try to see, whatever company you're going to go work for, Googling that company name plus employee housing, see if anybody's written any blog posts about it, if anybody's got any videos on YouTube. There's lots of videos on YouTube about employee housing at certain places. And so typically you can kind of get an idea for what to expect. In most cases, it's not bad. But like I said, it's nothing kind of really glamorous. It's just kind of a room, probably a twin bed, maybe couple old dressers in there. It's basically your bare bones for someone to live in most cases. But like I said, there are some places that have built new employee housing, and those might be a lot nicer. But don't go into it expecting anything really nice. I would expect, like I said, just like a bed, dresser, basic linens provided for you, maybe a little desk and a chair, just kind of the bare bones you need to get by. Also, expect to have a roommate. In most cases, you're going to have at least one, if not two roommates in employee housing. There are some companies that have single occupancy rooms, but they go pretty quickly. They're kind of in high demand. I know me these days, after being in seasonal work for a while, I like my own room. So when I'm looking for a job, I start looking early, and I always try to apply for the single occupancy positions. So they go kind of quickly because of people like me. So if that's, if having a roommate and staying with a roommate the whole time or roommates is something that may not work for you, seasonal work might not be your thing. I was like totally petrified of having a roommate because I've lived alone for, so long. But when I got there, it wasn't that bad. I've had a couple roommate horror stories. I won't say horror stories, but just kind of like stories of some roommates that were but then I've had some great roommates. I've had some roommates that turned into really good friends, people that I did not mind staying with at all. So it kind of goes either way, but overall I've had good experiences with my roommates. And plus two, it's seasonal, it's temporary. Even if the person you're rooming with kind of really isn't like, your ideal person to room with, it'll be over in 3 months. Just kind of learn to deal with it. So as far as the rooms go, once again, it kind of varies depending on where you're working in their employee housing. Some rooms will have a bathroom in the room. Some of them you'll share a bathroom with another room. Sometimes there's no bathrooms in the rooms at all. It's just kind of a community bathroom in the building, and everybody showers, uses the bathroom, does all that in one bathroom. It just kind of depends. Some of the rooms will have refrigerators, microwaves. Some of them won't. Some of them might have kind of a little kitchen deal in there. Some will just have a community kitchen. Some won't have any type of kitchen or anything like that, because especially if like your meals are provided, they don't want you doing any kind of cooking or anything in the rooms. There won't be any fridges or anything like that. All your meals, things like that, will take place in the employee dining room. So just once again, if you have any questions about these things when you're looking into a job, if you're on CoolWorks, which is the website I recommend for seasonal work, coolworks.com. I'll leave a link in the description box below. A lot of times the companies will have information on their housing on CoolWorks. If not, a lot of times on their website, they will have information about their housing. If not there, ask whoever you talk to when you finally get to talk to a representative from that company. If it's your phone interview, don't be afraid to ask, hey, what the housing's like, what's the housing like, and get as many details as possible. It's a legitimate question. You need to know. I've found that the better the housing, the more the people tend to talk about it. So if you're on the phone with someone and they really don't want to talk about the housing, it's probably crap. just kind of keep that in mind. But do as much research as possible. Find out what the housing's like. Because like I've said, I've showed up at some jobs and was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. But I got through it. And that's the thing. Housing may not always be the best, but you'll get through it. And for me, a guy who lived alone a lot, employee housing has actually been pretty fun. It's kind of like living in an apartment building with a bunch of your friends. Anytime I'm bored, I can just walk out the door and there's people outside hanging out. My friends got rooms around me. I can go visit with them. People, always coming by, knocking on my door, coming in to hang out. So employee housing can be really fun. The downside sometimes, though, is when you just kind of want to be left alone. You've got a roommate. Sometimes even when you don't have a roommate, people will come by. They want to talk. They know you're home because they know you're not at work because they work with you too. Like it can be kind of aggravating. Sometimes when, you just want to walk out your room and walk to the store, get something to eat. You have to walk past like all these people in employee housing. They want to talk to you. It can get kind of aggravating. But, that's just part of the gig. You kind of get used to it. And overall, is actually, pretty fun. When it comes to partying and hanging out and, alcohol and things like that in employee housing, once again, that differs as well. There are some companies that are just totally like, no alcohol, no matter how old you are in your room. There are some companies that are kind of like, if you're over 21, you're an adult. If you have alcohol, liquor, things like that, no one's going to say anything. Drugs are typically a bad idea, even weed. Most places, they don't want you smoking or doing any type of drugs in employee housing, so just keep that in mind. And some employee housing will have kind of a person whose job it is to kind of look over employee housing. So that's kind of all they do. They call them, I forget the term they call them, different names, different places. But basically the other person you go to when you first get there to check you in, show you your room, give you your linens. And they just kind of police the place and make sure there's not too much craziness going on. I kind of like having someone there just in case I need something, I can go to them. And I kind of like the fact that they keep it in line so that, you know, a lot of times you have some young people, their first time away from home. It's kind of cool to have someone there to kind of look out for them, honestly, and to just make sure things don't get too crazy. So I like when they have somebody kind of in charge of employee housing, but I like when they're pretty lax. Like I've worked at some places where the people were just strict, stern, you couldn't have any fun. And I worked at other places where they were there, but they were pretty laid back. And as long as you weren't doing anything too crazy, they weren't going to bother you. And that's kind of how I like it. Try to see if there's anything else I want to mention about employee housing. I think I've pretty much covered it. If you have any other questions about employee housing, please put them down in the comment box below. I'll try to answer them. Check out the rest of this videos on the rest of the videos on this channel, because they will be all about seasonal work. And so you might have other questions about seasonal work I've already answered. If not, any question you have, you can leave that in the comment box below as well. I'm Tim. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.